Today, I had the pleasure of painting with my good friend Dotty Fitzgerald. Dottie's home and studio are a feast for the eyes. You're going to love hearing our stories, talking about supplies, inspiration, and we'll talk about what really goes on inside the mind, the heart, and in the world of a creative. So I'm going to turn back the music and let you enjoy our conversation. Dottie explains her process. She first photographs a subject, and with oil pastels, she renders a smaller version.
Did my own artwork. This is pastel from, and then transfer. Then that's the inspiration. That's where I go from here.
So this is my friend Dottie. Dotty Fitzgerald is an artist from the Buffalo area, and Dottie does abstracts. I would call it that. Is that your style?
Expressionistic, yes. Combination.
As artists, can we really even box ourselves into a style?
No.
Right?
No.
Okay, so I wanted to express myself in an abstract way with varying mediums, and that's why I thought of you.
Thank you. And I use all kinds of things. Nothing is off limits in my work.
Other than bad acrylics. Come on.
I'm an oil painter.
Yes. Dottie's an oil painter.
Oil pastels.
She's one of those.
But nothing's off limits. I mean, ink, a stick, latex paint. You saw my downstairs studio. Nothing, any implement that can carry and push paint works for me.
That is the ultimate expressive style when you can pick up anything and make it work. I came a little surprised today. You exclusively work in oils. You talked about like me coming and I would maybe use some of your materials and you would use some of mine. Well, I'm not painting in oils today.
It's okay.
I don't want to embarrass myself. So I brought just a few random things that I use. And so I thought, well, I guess we're going to paint with my stuff today. I want to know a little bit about your background. I know you were an art teacher.
About the age of 9, my grandmother, Dorothy Bissell, an artist in Buffalo, connected with the art world, Albright Knox, all those people, took me outside and had me start painting. I attribute my real introduction there. She also started the little Williamsville Art Society, and so she really exposed me at a young age. Mm-hmm. And it was very natural. Mm-hmm. And so I just continued on. School and college, and then when I had a family, so decided that probably the best would be to be an art teacher. And I traveled to Italy and Portugal on my own with American University in Italy. Portugal on my own, and that's when I started with oil paint. And it took one brush stroke,
it changed.
Never going back.
Oh. Do you remember when you sold your first painting?
No.
It was that remarkable.
I was really fortunate, little sales at art shows and things like that. The big transformation came after the sabbatical. And then I can tell you paintings I sold then. And the amounts that they sold for.
Oh, I bet.
Do we have time for a little story?
Of course.
Because if not, we can just,
No, of course.
I had both my hips replaced. Had a show booked at the Castellani, solo show at the Castellani, painted on a walker with a brush attached to a stick. Did the whole show, hung the show came home. A gentleman calls me, I saw a painting at the Castellani that I'd really like to purchase. One of the pictures was sitting there in the studio, 7 by 7 foot or something. Looking at it and I go, I just don't like that. I can't believe that was in that show. I took a brush and I painted it all over, and 10 minutes later, knocks on the door and the gentleman goes, where's that painting? Oh, see my checkbook? We're leaving. He came to buy that painting, and I had painted over it 20 minutes earlier. More than a $5,000 painting. That story I remember.
Bet you never did that again. That's what he wanted.
That's what I wanted.
It just shows you too how art speaks to people, And even though you were ready to paint right over it, that meant something to him.
I didn't have that emotional, and something in it did to him.
Exactly. It's a very exciting thing to share what you love to do, your whole process, and then that it connects emotionally with somebody else, even though it might not to you in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, often people will say, "What's that about?" I'll give you, the typical answer. Then they're the secrets.
You
Not telling the secrets.
Never share the secrets.
Because I want them to have emotional reaction.
Exactly.
It's not the same as mine. That's okay.
That's all right. Yep, exactly. Like I would be fascinated to know the story.
Oh, you don't want to know the story behind this.
I brought some of my favorite tools to use. I brought some Debi's DIY chalk paint, a bunch of old brushes. I brought some liquid patina, which is a glaze. I brought these new pigment powders, the making powders. So yeah, we have a really limited palette, Dottie, but you can do a million things with these colors.
And let me just say, I don't know if you noticed downstairs, I only buy red, yellow, and blue. Black and white. I believe in mixing my own colors. So normally I would do dark color to light color, or light to dark, depending on what I'm using. So this is unfamiliar to me.
Sure. I have been working dark to light. I like to start with a dark black. We're going to do florals, and Dottie's a little nervous about the florals. We're just going to see what happens.
I need a brush. I'm going to do opposite. Since you're doing dark, I'm going to do light. If that's okay.
Absolutely.
And I can just put the white on here.
Sure. I do want you to know with the Debi's DIY, it's highly pigmented. This can be diluted like up to 90% with water and still retain the pigment. So I use it for everything from a watercolor. See, as it dries, it gets a little thicker,
I like that.
Which is kind of cool for creating, texture.
Okay. Start with the white. I'm just going to add it to give it a background. I'm just giving it a coat over.
Still, most of this you won't see.
My friend Dana, who you know, she was having a special birthday, and so would you come with me to paint pictures as gifts for the guests? I go, oh, sure, I'd be happy to. She puts down examples on the table. This is what I'd kind of like you to make them to look like. Follow this design. It lasted 3 seconds, and I only got to do one picture because she said, "You're not following the instructions."
She wasn't having it, huh?
No, she wasn't. She was not.
What do you think this is? A paint and sip party?
Yeah, she was like, "You're supposed to make them look like." Oh, okay, Dana. What you've done right here. I believe there are two things in most of my work, and this shows a perfect example of it. To hold the viewer's attention, color and line. People will see a color from across the room and be attracted to it.
Oh, sure.
And then when they get close, they see your small marks, and that holds their attention.
We're working with the same materials.
Yeah.
How differently we are going to use them and interpret.
Your first
drawing class, and of course I walk in. Everybody's nervous anyway, but trying not to act nervous.
Yeah,
because you're a freshman in college now, right? And so this guy walks in the back
yellow
in a bathrobe, and of course I start thinking like, well, that's odd. Like, why is he's in a bathrobe?
I
guess anything goes at college, right? And he gets up on the platform and strips right down. Yep. We all sat there and acted like This is the most natural
thing in the
world.
of
We've
course.
done this 100 times.
Exactly.
Right? It becomes so technical.
Yeah, that you're not. When I took Callie to the Albright Knox,
Mm-hmm.
she's in a stroller, so she's little. Mommy, why doesn't that man have a diaper on? I leave everything up for even though my grandsons, come and we explain everything. And it's interesting because then my grandsons he'll see the reactions of his friends when they see, for example, a figure drawing that I've done. And he's just like, really, it's just a figure drawing, it's art.
You mentioned something downstairs earlier that, like, when you start something, it very often ends up not even what you expected it to be.
No, always.
I'm feeling the same way. Always. Like right now, I'm definitely feeling like...
Well, especially for me to be doing a landscape, it's like, I'm not saying I don't, I do. But you see this yellow marker, it's like calling my name.
Oh, use it.
Well, I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let it dry for a little bit, but I'm exploring.
You're working with something a totally new medium for you.
Yeah, and I love it. I usually step up to a campus not having a clue.
I'll show you something else too. Do you have a palette knife here or no?
No, I have one.
That shocks me that you don't
No.
have a palette knife. I'm going to use this paint blade.
Are you sure?
My new favorite tool.
Okay.
So this is the IOD paint blade. It comes in 2 sizes. I love this thing. This is the big one. You can use this as a tool to push paint and create.
Mm-hmm. And you know what I like about these? They don't have an odor.
It's all natural ingredients.
Yeah, I love the fact that it doesn't have an odor. Oh, that's one of my favorite colors.
Here.
All-time favorite colors. This is something that you would frame, for example. You're looking,
Oh, sure.
and then you'll transfer the technique to furniture.
I think that I would like to try something like this on furniture. I think it could be really pretty. As they dry, Dottie, they will lighten up, so I usually always put a finish over.
The
You ever
thickness.
just sprinkle it right onto the...
I've done
Oh.
that. I've done that
That's
too.
a great idea.
See? And it kind of mixes with my wet.
And I've always loved birds. Birds have always been a feature.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel like, oh my gosh, we're getting so old when we are just enjoying the birds?
I just love the birds. One of my problems, it's not a problem, but I'm a very fast painter.
It's all right. Why is it a problem?
I don't know, I could,
It's not a problem.
I'm going to start a little tiny one. What about that? Oops, a daisy. And so the next workshop you're doing sounds divine.
I'm excited.
Sold out.
Yep. It's going to be called The Layers and Textures of Life, a creative exploration.
Instead of decorative, it's more,
Yes, like what we're doing right now.
yeah.
And letting go of like the comparisons.
It's so hard.
Sure it is.
It never goes away. And with my grandson right now dealing with that, he's just, I don't like this, and he'll want to start over. No, make that into something.
This has got a warmth to it that I wasn't digging at first.
This? Mm-hmm.
Mine.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm just kind of like embracing it. I'm like, okay, it's a little different than what I had hoped for, but I'm okay with it.
And again, as we just said a little bit, make something of it.
Mm-hmm.
This is not floral.
It's okay. It really is. Look, I'm not mad at you about that.
It's funny, you're doing abstract, I'm doing expressionistic. In other words, there's something recognizable in it. Oh, titles are another thing. I figured out a way around it. Again, another big show. Everything was mounted, everything was framed, ready to go. So I turned on the TV and I just took words from commercials. Unsalted butter, whatever the TV was saying were the titles.
I love it.
Were the titles. It was hysterical. See, I don't like this at all. It makes it so much easier. So now what I'll do is I'll pick up a book. And that one book will have all the titles in it.
So what do you think? You're using something totally different.
Oh, it's fun. I'm having fun.
Are you?
Yeah. I like the versatility.
Uh-huh.
I love the fact that it doesn't have an odor. I happen to like the natural ingredients.
I think what I like about the Debi's DIY is the pigments in it allow you to use it as, a thickened paint medium or as a watercolor. Mm. And sometimes we just need to set them aside and say, we'll see what it looks like tomorrow.
I've left a canvas and said, oh yeah, that's done. And I come back the next day and it's like, well, that's
not done.
Sucks. And the next day you're like, oh, this is just terrible. I can't believe I did this painting. This is just terrible. And then you come back the next day and it's like, oh yeah, that works. I never felt completely retired. Mm-hmm. And so I just sort of took this natural break. That doesn't mean I'm not constantly thinking.
You ever get to the point where it's like you have too many ideas for bodies of work and not enough time to complete them in a lifetime?
Yeah, that does happen. I have so many ideas, and once I'm down in the studio, it goes, you just don't know where it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And I do think about it constantly.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, I know, I can make it into a flower.
We came into this and the thought was we're going to do a floral study, right? Yeah. So let's show. We'll reveal what our finished canvases are.
We got to zoom in to show that.
I think it just speaks to the fact that when you are a creative, you start with a plan, but it might not end up with where you think it's going to go.
And here's the thing, I experimented 100% with this because I'm unfamiliar with these. Mm-hmm. And being an oil painter, I had no trouble making the transition. The materials were easy to understand, maneuverable. They took my pencil, they took marker, it was really easy.
Sometimes when we are unfamiliar with things, mm-hmm. our natural tendency is to go to what we are accustomed to.
Yeah.
Because we talked florals and you were a little hesitant. And I think that because you don't do floral studies and you've never worked with this,
right.
It's like your brain was like, I need to do something I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, the subject matter needed to be familiar because the materials were not.
Yeah, and that's a safety thing for us. So funny, we sit here with each other and it's like, oh my gosh, what does Dottie think of this? You go right back to those, like...
kindergarten.
Yeah, those thoughts. Instead of like, oh my gosh, look at what I did.
Yeah.
And this is very new to me too. It is a Dotty Fitzgerald.
Original.
And we got to see the entire process.
Yep. I think we had a good day. Thank you, dear friend.
Find out more about my friend Dottie's work at dfits.org. The link is below. All the Debi's DIY supplies that we use today are available at lnjgoods.com or at our brick and mortar shop in Medina, New York. Thank you for joining us here at L&J Goods. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.